to briefly bring the specter of the playoff, and we want this podcast to not just be simply bracket breaking and all that, right?
Oh, it's exhausting.
Right. Because this is fun.
It's really exhausting.
We like
I know
narratives.
people love it, but God,
I don't know that they love it.
Hypothetical.
I think it gets reaction. I think it gets reaction. And I'd actually would care to know what the fans think. But like I think that there's something great about college football. Look, the playoff and getting in is huge, but there's something magical about college football of the idea that just what we said. A team that completely overlooked, and Curtis Rourke sitting there at Ohio, just down the road, and saying, "God, I wouldn't mind playing over there, and they don't want me." They could have picked him up as a transfer. They went and got Will Howard. Not saying it's a bad choice. Rourke had an incredible sophomore year 2 years ago. He did less productive last year. But I think there's something great about college football as the story. So, but there is a playoff, and Indiana is 10-0. Obviously, if they win, they're going to get in the playoff, and the dynamic is they're going to play in the probably play in the Big Ten championship game. But if they lose, how important? What is the margin? They do not have a great victory, and even though they would be 11-1, they would be running into a lot of two-loss teams in the SEC that have a great victory. And I think that is, I'm not here to blow smoke on the SEC, but winning, if you're Ole Miss and you're like, hey man, we beat Georgia, and Georgia certainly would have 3 big wins. Like that's not a real comparison. They got a break from the schedule. They drop Louisville. There's different things that happen, but what do they have to show? Is there a way to lose that at 11-1, they can say, hey, look, we still belong in this playoff, and they will win that debate? What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's a lot of playoff implications here. Especially if you lose. You win, it takes care of itself. You lose, and you want the other chip on the shoulder for 2 weeks. They've been, since these playoff rankings started coming out, ain't played nobody, Paul. Indiana ain't played nobody. So this is somebody, and it's a big somebody. And if you get trucked, I would just say, well, see, they were just a product of their schedule. And then you slide down, and the pecking order gets really interesting and really complicated with those, presumably 4 SEC teams with 2 losses, and with Penn State. So Indiana, if they lose, they gotta show up. They gotta perform well. It's got to be a good game. They can't get trucked. If they get trucked, I fear for their playoff chances. You got to be able to at least say, all right, we were within 7 to 10 points. Penn State lost by 7 on their home field. We were on the road. I think you have to be in the game. So that's going to be really, really important. If you win, again, it takes care of itself. But I'm telling you, Ross, you've done this too. We've been trying to put together your mock bracket or whatever. And it is so hard, I think, 6 through 11. You got all the SEC 2-loss teams that are good teams that have good wins. You got Penn State, which has a good record but no real good wins, and the home loss to Ohio State. And then you got Indiana, which is undefeated but ain't played nobody. So ordering those and then throwing Notre Dame, that's really difficult. And it's going to be hard for the committee, and we are going to hear so much hollering and screaming about it. And I think a lot of people just flat haven't really watched Indiana. So they just, we'll see. And so again, this is another one where I'm sure the committee has, but I wonder from a public standpoint, this is, if some people are just looking at Indiana for the first time, this would be a very nice time to show up and play well.
I think what they need to do is in the second half it'd still be a relevant game. Maybe at the end of the game they lose by 2 touchdowns, but can they keep it within a touchdown for most of the second half? It feels like what they have to do because, the scheduling is fascinating because, and I know Scott Dolson, the athletic director at Indiana, maybe talked to Pat about this too earlier, and he talked to me about it as well. They did this study on football at the school, commissioned this study on why they've been so bad at football and how they can improve, right? And one of the things that came up was strategically scheduling. And so they dropped the Louisville game, played $1 million to drop it, and replaced it with FCS Western Illinois, who they beat 77-3. And partly because of that, right, 9 of the 10 games that they played have been against opponents with a 500 or less record. So just one winning record right now, and that's Washington at 6-5. So there's a pretty good chance that, there's a very good chance that they'll end the season having played one ranked team, Ohio State, and there's a decent chance they end the season actually playing one team or 0 teams potentially with a winning record,
or beat 0 teams. Yeah, Yeah, it is. It's a big one. It's a big one. I think there's a comparative to Penn State that is important there. And that Penn State score, I mean, they couldn't get the goal line. It was close.
I mean, yes, it was a competitive game. Penn State had a chance to tie or take the lead late. But as you pointed out, I mean, Will Howard gave them 14 points and they still couldn't win.
Yeah.
So